Twice the Merlin. If Merlin's so great, why isn't there a Merlin 2?
Alright, so hi and welcome back to fucking Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Call me Mr. Kill 6 Billion Demons, because I'm about to talk about royalty.
Ooh, I love the way Kill 6 Billion Demons talks about royalty. So that over there is Ed. The guy I'm pointing at now, and no longer pointing at, is Ed.
Hi.
That really narrows it down for you, the audience, who are listening. The guy that I'm pointing at now, and now I'm no longer pointing at, was Merlin. Still is Merlin, I assume.
Oh, it could be anyone.
Well, that's really not up to me, is it? And I am someone that's not Ed or Merlin.
The rest of this
Some
is
kind
left
of-
as an exercise for the viewer.
Hypothetical third guy. We're going for a real fucking existential one right at the start because I have just gotten remedicated and it's been a weird couple of days. I'm Cam. How's it going?
Guys, what if we got Doug on the podcast?
Doug can gargle my Doug and balls.
So, Ed...
Doug's kept bringing up really controversial topics, and now we've got to come up with more controversial topics.
The thing with the Doug is that the only guy I know is actually Sebulba. I can't really judge all Doug off of him.
Doug enrages and vexes me in a way that no other man does.
His Macy's.
Okay.
Blessed.
So,
Ed, yeah, you said you had something of a discussion topic for us.
oh, I've got many discussion topics, all of them controversial.
Each more controversial than the last.
You have taken your heavy frisbee and you've added or taken away some electrons, and now it is some kind of discus ion.
Oh, Christ. Okay,
Alright,
so,
we're making
Boo.
jokes. Jokes at a rate.
To lead off with, fiction. It's not reality.
Yep.
Hard false.
Now,
Alright, yeah, okay.
We're already getting into direct, disagreements. Okay.
Uh-huh.
so,
Fiction is real. I am going to throw a book at you, and you can tell me if it's not real.
Okay, but that's not fiction, that's a book.
No, that would be a non-fiction book.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but I can dodge words too. So watch out, motherfucker.
Yeah.
So, anyway. The Divine Right of Kings.
Oh my god, is it time to talk about my favorite Disney Channel original movie? Secret Society of Second Born Royals? Is it time?
Yeah, it might be. But Ed, where are you going with this?
So, here's the thing. Now, in the real world, we don't believe in the Divine Right of Kings.
Well, we don't, but I know people that do.
Absolutely. But the argument, obviously, is that they're just guys. They're nothing special. Now...
A way of kings?
A way of kings, you might say. Yes. Now, that's kind of the point. Now,
That's what the king uses to get jacked with.
I've
when he goes to
seen
the
a
gym.
lot of people...
He eats the way of kings.
Alright, I thought
No.
you were doing some kind of, dumbbells way heavy kind
no,
of
I was
bit.
doing a, fucking... The
Curds and
wheat
whey.
product.
Yeah. Fucking Little
Sorry,
Miss
Ed.
Muppet over here.
Sorry, Ed. I'm not able to shut up at the moment, but you keep
We
going.
know.
Power through it, champ.
Anyway, there's a lot of moral and philosophical debates that we have in real life that we just can't apply to fiction because a lot of moral issues and ethical issues and philosophical issues in real life are based on the fact that, all men are created equal.
Well, they say all men are created equal. But
You look at me and you look at Samoa Joe. You can
know
see that statement is not true.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad we could blow out the microphones for that.
Yes.
We did legally have
The
to.
problem is, we just can't discuss that accurately or with any degree of real relevance in fiction, because in fiction, you can just write someone who's better and who is just better.
Yeah.
I need you to know that applies in real life too, by any measurable metric. The measurable, the metrics by which all men are created equal are not measurable in real life.
Okay, I'm just real mad about some discussion I saw the other day about how Lord of the Rings is problematic because, Aragorn shouldn't be a king.
He should be a president elected democratically.
Yeah. It's...
Oh my god, for real?
That's not even the best Lord of the Rings' problematic take that there is.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's the weak take of it doesn't pass the Bechdel test, which yes is very disappointing, but doesn't go anywhere interesting. Lord of the Rings doesn't have women in it. It's true.
Not passing the
That's a
Bechdel
problem.
test doesn't even mean that a work isn't feminist.
No, I know, but you know what I mean.
Which is
Lord
not
of
a
the Rings
criticism of you. That's a criticism of arbitrary forum users.
I will go out on a limb and say Lord of the Rings is not that text that doesn't pass the Bechdel test. It is not a text with women in it, and that is not for good reasons. But the real take on Lord of the Rings being morally problematic in a way that is active rather than passive is the way orcs are treated.
In that they are ontological evil.
Yes, the existence of ontological evil is fucked up. You can't do that actually.
Yes, but okay.
But also, they
herein
are
lies
not
my-
ontological evil in the text. They do things that are not ontologically evil.
But herein lies my point. Can we really talk about morality in fiction if you can just write a story called Dan versus the Ontological Evil?
Well, I mean, that's like saying, can we discuss the morality of stealing a loaf of bread when you can go kick babies? You can.
Man, Les Mis is
They're
different than when I
things,
first read it.
right? And that
Sorry, I can't stop yelling.
it would be.
That's
You're
all right.
right that it is not particularly interesting to discuss Dan versus the ontological evil, but there are books that aren't that to discuss, and you can discuss aspects of Dan versus the ontological evil.
Okay,
Sure.
in theory, depending on how it was handled, I might be interested in reading Dan versus the Ontological Evil.
Certainly, with a title like that, I would at least check what it is.
Yeah, right? I'd give that a little peek. I
But
give that a little
that's
thumb
kind
through.
of my point. You need to get into a much deeper level of analysis of a fictional text.
I need analysis to stop the ontological evil. That's for sure.
Yeah, you need to get into a deeper level of analysis of a text to have problems with it, like there is ontological evil, or there is a rightful king who deserves to be a king.
Are you saying
Yes.
that? Wait, yeah. Is that? Sorry, I thought that was going somewhere, but that was a statement.
That was the beginnings of a statement.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that's fair then. I thought that you were going to jump off that into something silly, but you didn't, which is probably for the best.
Sorry, I've become distracted by looking at the waveforms of my voice in the top bar of the Ableton sound mixer that we use. That we use to record Overheard and UniSFA. And periodically, I'm saying things, and those things are basically entirely consistently huge black rectangles on the top bar because I've been blowing out my microphone this whole time. Sorry, John. So Secret Society of Second-Born Royals. Is it time for me to discuss one of my favorite movies that I've ever seen entirely in my life?
Cam, did you have something to say?
No, and Merlin's basically going the right direction of, here's a movie with a really fucking dumb moral setup, right? It's a movie that is inherently morally flawed in a way that obviously isn't worth discussing in the same way that what a human being does in real life is worth discussing, but it's worth discussing both as a theoretical construct and as a thing that somebody made on purpose.
Yes.
Also, should we maybe define the word ontological?
No.
I feel like we're going to bring it up a bit.
Look, we can spell it.
So ontological or ontology means the study of things sort of in an existence state is, I feel, the most basic way to phrase that.
That's...
Yeah.
So when you say that something is an ontological truth, it is like a basic tenet of existence
Yeah.
that thing
So-
is so. And when you say ontological evil, that thing is, by its very nature, by its very existence, evil, because that is a core facet of what the thing is.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have monsters where, because supernatural stuff be like that in this universe, evilness is like a law of physics. Like, you can measure the evilness levels.
It's
of
like
this
in
thing.
Lilo and Stitch when she draws a little silhouette of Stitch and says, "You are this much evil," and it works like a charity thermometer.
Yes. Now, I don't think any of us believe that ontological evil exists in reality. However...
Only in the works of Tracy Harding.
Yes, it can exist in fiction, and I don't think that's inherently grounds to...
I think that
kingness
ontological
or-
evil does exist. It's just not evil on purpose, right? I think that things can be evil by accident.
So we're talking about natural disasters.
I was going to say specific fucked up bacteria, but yeah, that'd work.
Okay, yeah.
Like, you know, the fog that turns people inside out, I would call an ontological evil.
What is evil, then? Because we have to define that before we can say something is ontologically
that's a very
evil.
good point. The reason that I can believe this is because that I believe that evil is not necessarily just, like, what you are, why you are doing what you do. It is the consequences, right? An act that, like, you can do evil by accident. It's just that it's different.
See, from my perspective, I think you can be, like, hurtful. I think you can be hurtful on an incredibly wide scale unintentionally, but evil requires some kind of overarching knowledge in order to be so.
Like, the idea that it requires intent, I find, to me at least, a meaningless distinction. You can't get away with this just by not knowing you're doing it.
Okay, but
I'll fist fight a hurricane because it's an asshole.
No, you won't.
there is something that all of the things you have brought up as, like, real-life ontological evils have in common, which is that they are not sentient.
Yes, I don't...
Yeah.
So...
Oh, no, to be fair, that's because I
think...
don't want to get into the human beings that I think are ontologically evil in this way.
Oh, fair enough. But...
Oh, I suppose... Okay, no, sorry. A human being can't be ontologically evil in the same...
You don't want to talk about Hurricane Jim, the ontological evil?
Well, Hurricane Jim's just a guy. That's just his name.
Is Doug ontologically evil?
No, he just sucks.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's sort of the point.
Cam and I in direct opposition this podcast.
Yeah.
I think in real life, you cannot be both sentient and ontological because, to some extent, being something ontologically requires the removal of free will.
Yeah.
Right, yes, okay.
Yeah, I think that's in line with sort of my thinking. Evil has to be purposeful in some kind of way.
Right.
And that can change depending on the scale and context. But I don't think the fog that turns you inside out can be ontologically evil, because it's just a fog and it kind of doesn't have control over the effects that it causes.
I think I agree with Ed, and that's why I think that only fog can be ontologically evil. Fog doesn't have free will. That's why it can be evil. Right? A human being can be not ontologically evil, it can do evil things. A human being can only be evil on purpose. Right? You can do evil things by accident, but a human being can only be evil on purpose.
Okay, yeah, I'm coming around to this.
Whereas a fog that turns people inside out, it does not have the free will, so it can only be judged on its actions.
I really wish that
what if that fog was the rightful king?
Yeah.
Because, like...
I mean, to be fair, it did pull the sword from the lake.
Yeah, it turned the sword inside out from the stone.
Yeah. The stone's inside the sword now, and that counts. We checked the old law, and it does count legally.
So yeah, I checked.
Oh, great work, fellas.
So yes, I brought this topic up with, the right of kings.
Yeah.
So the flip side of this, on the opposite side of ontological evil, something can be like ontologically a ruler or ontologically good.
Yes. I do think that being a king makes you ontologically evil.
Ooh. But what if I just write a story where kings aren't ontologically evil?
Well, that's a fun theoretical construct, isn't it? What if I wrote a story where upside down cake wasn't very good?
Upside down cake is mid.
Okay, fine. Let me find something slightly more controversial or less controversial than whether an upside down cake is good. I could also write a story where hats are a minimum of 3 feet tall.
Okay, I'm interested.
Right?
Tell me more.
Well, all I'm saying is you can write a story where things that aren't are. That's how stories work.
No, okay,
Yes,
let's
point is...
balloon this out. Cam, why are hats 3 feet tall in this universe?
Minimum 3 feet tall, sorry.
Minimum, but why?
Because they consider Doug Dimmadome to be a sexual beast. An absolute tyrannosaurus, but also it's illegal to not imitate him because of that.
So, is it...
And I mean illegal in terms of, like, the laws of nature. Hats have to be that tall, or they're not hats, they're something else.
Okay.
Hang on, guys, I'm just tweaking our microphones down.
That's some kind of tall beanie you're wearing instead.
Mm-hmm. So, is it like a display of sexual potency or masculinity?
No. It's an ontological definition. Anything
Right.
shorter than 3 feet is if you wear it on your head, it's some kind of fucked up tall beanie. Mm-hmm. But if it is over 3 feet tall and you wear it on your head, it is capable of being a hat.
Alright, how did this culture arrive at this position?
Well, it's a law of nature, isn't it? That's what I said. It's ontologically one of the requirements for being a hat is for it to be at least 3 feet tall.
Well, yeah, but hats are man-made.
No.
I see.
You can just pick a hat up and put it on your head. Every child knows this.
Do they?
Yes. You can give okay, not every child, but like a lot of children, if you give them a bowl, they will hat it. Kids will turn an item that they can put on their head into a hat, and they will say, "Look at this hat," and you will say, "That's a great hat you've got there," to the kid wearing a colander.
I don't think I've ever put a colander on my head.
You gotta try it, man.
Yeah, man, like... my god, dude, you gotta
I don't want to put
this.
our house colander on my head.
Well, yeah, but if you're a baby, you don't give a shit. If you're, like, a child below, like, 5 years old, or even a little older... Fuck it, I'll put a colander on my head. We'll wash it afterwards if you really want, but like...
Ooh, I think I was looking away for the last bit.
Oh, that's
Apologies
okay.
about that.
You're good, I think. You may want to move it a little lower. I think it's at your eye level still, but that's fine.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. If you need to, like, hold it, do. But
Man, there is an art to talking into a microphone.
Oh, there sure
Oh,
is.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. This is part of the gifts that the Metamorphosis gave me, is learning how to, like, look at people
it may
with
help
just
you
my
shuffle
eyes.
to your right and move the whole microphone stand over, just so that we're both a little bit better angled for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because now instead of having to look away to Merlin, you can sort of pivot your eyes only.
Yeah.
To a degree. Sorry, everyone. You're gonna hear us discussing the physical. It's funny.
Pretend that I'm evil
really
and I'm
funny...
conducting schemes across the high court from you.
Just for the audience's benefit, because this joke might have flown over their head. The joke is that when we're recording this, we're actually not doing it in a physical space. We're just making bits about how if we were, Ed may have to move.
Yeah,
we're
actually
doing
an ontological recording.
We're in an ontological Zoom call.
If you're listening to this, then this is an ontologically a recording, right? We must have recorded this for you to be listening to it.
I mean, couldn't I be described by you and also be listening? Aren't I listening to the recording right now?
Well, yeah, we're listening to it as we're recording, but if we weren't recording, would we be hearing this?
Yes.
Not the same. Not through the headphones.
Yeah, sure. All right.
But not for us necessarily, but for the audience at home, this has ontologically been recorded.
The audience who is ontologically at home or on the bus.
You'd best start believing in ontological podcasts, Miss Turner. You're in one.
So ontology, huh?
So, Ed, yeah, sorry. We keep interrupting your King's bit, I think.
No. Like, my point was, I feel like talking about ontological evil is a little easier to illustrate, but I was going to start off by talking about, I don't think you can criticize a lot of stories where the king is just rightfully a king.
Yes.
Like, I've seen a lot of people who say, no, kings aren't rightfully kings. If you write a story where the king is rightfully the king, you're doing it wrong. And
I mean, again...
I think it's fun to read a story about a guy who is just...
Yeah, what if there was a guy that was right?
Yeah.
That's a neat concept. It's all... Okay, I
also,
mean...
it's a lot easier to follow a story about one guy than an entire cultural movement.
I'm going to be rude here to this guy saying these things, but... Yeah, you know what else isn't a real thing? Is the things that happen in this fiction book.
What?
Yeah.
Well, like, you're right. Kings aren't, like, divinely right, and they are often shitheads. But, Aragon's not a real guy, either. Like, Frodo's not... Hobbits don't exist.
Wait, Lord of the Rings didn't happen?
What I'm saying is that...
Canonically, it did, actually.
The concept of a good king is a fantasy species.
Is Aragorn not gonna climb down my chimney and leave me presents on Bilbomus?
Solid pronunciation there.
I'm very sorry that this is how you found out. Oh, I actually feel bad for saying that. I know this is your fake cry, and I still feel bad. I'm so fucking Merlin
look at our microphone records. Like, Merlin, no matter how much I turn you down, you find
It's because
a way.
I can't resist you, Ed. I have to keep up the pursuit.
God damn it.
I'm gonna get you one day, Ed, even if I have to catch you in a giant butterfly net.
Ed made a solid argument for auspisticism today.
Do tell.
Sorry, auspisticism? What?
You're right.
I'm sorry.
Hey, do you want to be
the
our...
Homestuck Club's romance.
Oh, for God's sake.
You just mediated a discussion between us real good.
Oh.
That's the exact groan I get out of Dave sometimes, and I love it. The exact, like, I hate this bit.
Okay.
I blew out my mic laughing again.
Sure, I'm your Homestuck Discord moderator.
Yes, thank you. Appreciated it.
Being an auspicious is like having 2 Discord kittens at once.
The girls are... Presidential alert. The girls are fighting.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
Oh, Secret Society of Second-Born Royals.
Yeah, no,
sorry,
let's
I've
go,
been
let's
gunning to
go.
talk about
Let's
this.
go.
So Secret Society of Second-Born Royals takes place in a small European kingdom whose name I don't remember anymore. It's basically a Genovia XP.
Its name is Goob.
Okay, in the Kingdom of Goob. And currently, in Goob, it is the 21st birthday of the eldest daughter, and she's poised to inherit the throne because the dad of the elder sister and the protagonist died in like a mysterious plane crash years ago. Hope that doesn't become relevant later on in the plot. But second sister finds out later that due to, obviously as like the firstborn, you are first in line to inherit the throne and probably will. Especially now that,
right of kings.
yeah, you have the divine right of kings, and especially now when like infant mortality has gone down, so it's, actually likely that you will live that long.
Yeah, they don't have to worry too much about that.
So if you are the secondborn, you genetically inherit powers that allow you to defend the king and kingdom from all evil.
Siblings have never gotten into a fight about the succession before, and they're never going to start.
That would never, ever happen, and no one would ever, ever use their superpowers to kill an older sibling to obtain the throne.
And it definitely wouldn't be a HBO show called The Succession. Or is it Succession? I don't know.
That is what Succession is about.
Really? I thought it was about homosexuals.
It's about gay superheroes.
Right, okay.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, yeah, no, I accept this.
Cool.
That is not my understanding of the show, but it's
Well,
my understanding of the show.
I mean, you only watched the first episode, so how would you
I
know?
barely watched the whole thing.
Yeah, see, exactly.
I know there's some guys that people lose their minds over.
Tom Gregg shippers are fucking insane.
That's what I've heard, yes.
Yeah.
You're one of them, I believe.
Like, I don't know, the thing is that Nat sent me a little video of Tom saying...
For reference,
Greg...
imagine the two the least interesting looking men you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. Tom was like...
I've lost interest.
Greg, I love you. I'm gonna kill you. Let me wrestle you to the floor right now. If we were in, like, the 6th century Byzantine Empire, I would castrate you and keep you as a slave. And I think that that's fucking nuts, and that makes me very interested in the interpersonal relationship between these two men.
That you're a shipper of them in the same way as, like, I've seen shipping happen before. You are mostly just sort of morbidly interested.
Okay, so they're not targets of shipping, they're blorbos.
People definitely do ship them together.
The way that they interact.
Yeah, in both healthy and unhealthy ways. I just want to smash them together like 2 Barbies and see what happens.
Fair enough. So, yes, superpower second-born royalty.
Well, that's the whole thing, really.
Yes.
Nice.
You get to be a superhero. Oh, this is not just this country, by the way. It's all countries.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
very
every
cool.
country. The Secret Society encompasses the entire world, and they root out threats to any kingdom.
So, if the monarchy is overthrown, does the second-born son
It's the
become
second-born's job to
does-
commit
yeah.
honourable seppuku after that for failing to prevent the monarchy from being overthrown.
Or is it their job to re-establish the monarchy?
Within
it's
the
their
meta
job
of the show, they inherit these powers through genetics,
Yes.
which
I
makes
see.
no sense, but is the wording of the movie. So I can only assume that through, like, the long line of, like, rightful heirs to the throne, that there does and always will exist a, like, true King of England, that will pull the sword from the stone at some point.
Also, because again, we have the divine right of second-born royals to have superpowers implies that the actual regular divine right of kings works.
Yes.
So why would you overthrow your monarch?
That's fair. But yes, Cam, to answer the question, like the point you made before this bit, No, I'm not taking
have a
any.
hat?
I'm not taking any issue with like portrayals of the, divine right of kings or ontological kingness.
Yeah, no.
What I'm saying is, it doesn't automatically make sense to apply a real-world philosophical system to a fictional universe when that fictional universe can just have a different philosophical system to explore.
Well, I also think that, you don't...
This
like,
is a very Watsonian interpretation.
Yeah, well, I also say having one good king does not imply the divine right of kings is real even within a setting, right?
Yeah.
You can be like, this special man did it. Look how cool it would be if we had a special guy who could do that. It's sad that we don't have that in real life, whilst not saying the divine right of kings is. Lord of the Rings does not do that. It straight up has divine right of kings. That's fine. That's what it does.
Yeah.
I think that, what monarchy in fiction can be used to do, and sort of more broadly with fiction as a general point, doesn't necessarily, endorse divine right of kings, but is more just, a thought experiment for the author as to the ramifications of certain, what if this moral or ethical position was generalized to be a sort of cultural touchstone?
It's also a very useful shorthand for this person doesn't have to answer to everyone.
Yeah.
It's a way of saying this person has this much power arbitrarily. They actually can just say things and they happen. There's no checks on a king. And if there are, they're intentionally put there as a plot element. It is a literary device to give your character the ability to do what you need them to do. In as much as anything else.
Yeah. On a broader sense, basically, to some extent what I am just saying is, if you know how to write them, overpowered characters are just fun.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
There
There are many ways to do that.
Yeah, no, the concept of a Mary Sue is bullshit. There are a lot of characters where I would call them Mary Sue-ish because they are overpowered and the author doesn't know how to tell a good story about an overpowered character.
Yes, that is the... So, do you know the original Mary Sue?
Yes, of course I know.
Yeah, it was Star Trek fanfic, right?
Yes.
Yeah, where the problem was that it wasn't very well written. That is the problem.
Yeah.
And it has come to mean several other things and been used as an insult and been shitty for a long time now, but at the end of the day, the problem with a Mary Sue is that your protagonist is too good and it ruins the way that the story is written. Yeah. This is absolutely how I play characters in RPGs.
And if
your character, is good enough at everything such that there is no longer really any viable conflict in the story.
Yeah. And you can explore that. I'm generally not much of an anime fan. But, if we are to use an example of a massively overpowered character that is not a Mary Sue...
Saitama?
Yeah, Saitama from One Punch Man. Well, the story is about, this guy is overpowered.
Oh my god.
How does that feel?
Yeah.
Oh my... Ed, for just a second, my brain died, and I genuinely thought you were going to say Saitama from One Piece. You remember
also,
Saitama
I would
from
say
One Piece.
a very similar concept to Saitama from One Piece is Mob of Mob Psycho 100.
Don't you mean
he's not quite as...
Mob from My Hero Academia?
Yeah. He's not quite as powerful as Saitama from One Punch Man, but it's very much a similar concept of kid with phenomenal psychic powers and also isn't very good at being a social guy.
The thing about Mob is that he is my sweet little darling baby boy, and I want to just pick him up and bowl him down the road like my cat.
Mob Psycho 100. I think it's very fun.
So, a Mary Sue arises where you try to make
you cover
the problem.
All the weaknesses.
The problem is that this the problem of the plot is that this person has to defeat something or navigate a situation, and they start with all of the tools that they need to do that and more. Whereas you can start a person with all the tools that they need and more, and then just put them in a different situation. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a question of whether or not they are overpowered. It has to be a question of, can you tell a good story
is it interesting?
about a person with these abilities, with this personality, in these circumstances?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the conflict meaningful?
Yeah.
Because once the conflict becomes meaningful, once there are stakes that you can tangibly explain to an audience, and a character who is not insufferable to read, you can tell a story.
Yeah. You can
and
tell
I
a
would
story
say
before that even, but
sometimes you don't even need a character who's not insufferable. but the way I relate to fiction involves me, like, liking a character, or, like, at least understanding their perspective, and I find it very difficult to finish books where I want to throttle the storytelling perspective.
I've actually had a reasonably, not like a hard line rule for myself, but when I'm reading stuff, is that it has to have a likable protagonist, or it's like that's one of the things I'm like, if I don't like reading about the guy that I read about, I don't want to read about him.
So how do you define a likable protagonist?
I like him.
Okay, but can you cringe at their flaws?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
it's
good.
do I enjoy? Sorry, not like necessarily likable. Is it good to read about? If the protagonist sucks, I will not like. Do I? Yeah, it's do I like reading the things that they do?
Yeah,
So
I think.
Sorry.
There's no clear way to pin this down, just because it's so severely tied to someone's artistic preferences. Yeah. For me, I think it's a mixture of three qualities. Whether I would have a beer with this person, whether I can envision them hanging out with their friends, do I give a shit about what's happening to them?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think...
sorry.
I will also say, for me, like, it's not necessarily a criticism of the content to say I didn't like the protagonist, I stopped reading. It's like, no, I just didn't like the protagonist, I stopped reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
But it can be anything.
Sorry, I feel like we're cutting off Ed a lot here. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
No,
That's not your fault.
so the character that came to mind of, like, someone that I've questioned if I like as a character is Harry Dresden.
Yeah, fair enough.
Now, I don't know how much you guys know about the Dresden Files.
For me, I got a few books in, and then Harry Dresden became uninteresting to read about.
So I find Harry Dresden extremely interesting. Sorry.
What I know about the Dresden Files is that it's like an urban fantasy kind of thing. Harry Dresden, like, solves mysteries in Chicago, I want to say, and he has a shit car.
That is very important.
And he's very misogynistic.
Yes, except it's... Okay,
which is not necessarily
Note he is a fantasy wizard.
Yeah, yes. Which is not necessarily a bad thing for Jim Butcher to write about. You can purposefully give your characters, like, prejudices and then have them work to, like, overcome them or, like, succumb to them in an interesting way.
You've hit the nail on the head. Now, more specifically, Harry Dresden has a massive white knight complex. A woman shows up with any kind of problem, and he is going to solve it for her, whether she can or not.
I have to save her.
Yes. And this gets him in trouble, and it is treated as a character flaw.
Maidens I have rescued on the internet.
Many times in the first...
Maidens that have rewarded me with sex. Sorry.
But yes, many times in the first 3 to 4 books, I really, like, stop and think to myself, is it... Like, okay, the author knows this is a flaw. It's treated as a flaw. But am I having fun reading from the point of view of this man who has a massive complex?
Sometimes,
I push through and, like, he starts acknowledging it. His friends call him out on it. It gets him almost killed a bunch of times because he keeps getting, like, noir-styled femme fataled.
That Harry Dresden.
Yeah, and...
He is a noir detective, that is his thing.
Yeah, and, like, eventually, and he starts making progress, and I look back on the series and I think, man, that was a very flawed character who, like, had intentional flaws put in. He had to deal with those flaws. There was an interesting story told about him confronting his flaws, but my God, was it
rough to read at times?
Yeah, a bit of a hard read at times when I was reading the point of view of a man who was experiencing some flaws.
Yeah, and it's hard to do well, right? And sometimes to tell the story, it has to not be fun to read for a bit. And the hard part's managing that.
Yeah. You gotta walk a very fine line with that, because if it gets too icky, readers will just go, this isn't good for me.
Also, fun to read. It's not necessarily fun. It's it has to be engaging, right?
Compelling.
It's you can burn a lot of goodwill by having your character just be shit for too many 2 pages, right? Like, but Yeah, it's that you've got to make it so that it's like, all right, I trust that this is at least going to get back to the things I do like.
Yeah.
To read about, or am compelled by.
Yeah, well...
Content warning. Merlin talks about the novel Lolita for the next 5 minutes, which some may find disturbing, so feel free to skip ahead.
I read Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, I want to say a couple of years ago now, and I didn't get to finish it because the book was riddled with a publishing error that made it unfinishable. But until where I had to stop, I was really captivated by it, and I thought it was a really interesting read.
Was it the same publishing error that made me stop rereading the X-Wing series, where, in the last third of the book, the right page of every, pair of pages that you open was just a little bit... The first, third of it had been cut off and moved, so you physically couldn't read the book.
Similar. So my copy of Lolita from pages 86 to, I want to say, 150-something were not pages 86 to 150. They were, in fact, a repeat of the first half of the book. Oof. And then at 150, the pages just completed the rest of the story like everything was normal.
That's a real fucking way to experience a novel.
Yeah. I didn't appreciate the time loop shit in Lolita, I have to say. Oh, that made everything kind of discordant.
It really seems like a misplaced literary device there.
But anyway, back to my original point, is that Humbert, who is, the protagonist of Lolita, who is conducting this relationship...
Just quick sidebar for those of you who don't know this already, and... understandably, if you don't know this, would be upset. The protagonist is not the good guy. He's just the main guy.
Yeah, sorry. I was about to say that.
Oh, sorry.
The protagonist who is intentionally conducting a relationship with an underage girl, he is in his late 30s, I want to say, and Dolores is 14.
Yeah.
So very, very icky. But Vladimir Nabokov takes intentional steps to sort of put you in that mindset and portray Humbert as sympathetically as he can in order to demonstrate the kind of
it's
pervasive sort of miasma of icky that accompanies these situations, and to sort of
may I? Mm-hmm. From my awareness as well, it's also to show that Humbert is doing everything in his brain to make sure that he doesn't think that he sucks.
Yes.
Yeah,
right?
It's POV. You are trying to rationalize the fact that you are a monster.
People who are doing bad things do not think of themselves as arch-villains. They think of themselves as protagonists, because that is a natural way to conceive of the self.
Mm. You understand why you do the things that you do to some degree, certainly to a better degree than anyone else.
And yeah, I thought it was very interesting, just because, Nabokov is a very accomplished writer, and also because, I think that the ethical and, moral questions that it poses are interesting. Bummed that I never got to finish it, though. Shrug.
We're going to need to put a content warning in this,
That's fine. That's in half the episodes.
Yeah.
It's all good.
We can just say, hey, we mentioned, Lolita during this section of the podcast. Don't listen to the next couple minutes if you don't want to hear about it.
Yeah. Oh, God. Sorry, I was meaning to segue, but then I did not segue.
No,
how fucked up is it that segue is spelt like that? Yeah. Does anyone else, find it?
Seguige?
Yeah. And I understand it's a loan word from French. And sometimes I think that we could do with an English academy, like the Académie Française, but I also think that would be the fucking bane of my life, and I would throttle everyone in it.
I think if we had one, its job should be to ruin the language as fast as possible and turn it into 15 different splinter languages.
Anyway,
English spelling. Discord. English spelling wasn't unified or, condensed down into... there is one correct spelling for each word, until the mid-1700s, when English had been being a viable language for about, 500 to 700 years at that point.
There are too many conflicting standards for how to use the English language when written down. We should create a final, universal one that everyone can agree on. Issue. There is now one more conflicting universal standard.
Do you know that the GH in words like ghost is from Flemish?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, well, that's a little... I read a very interesting book a couple of months ago. It's called Word by Word by Corey Stamper, and it is her reflections on being a lexicographer for the Merriam-Webster dictionary. And I got it through the WA libraries, in case anyone is interested in reading it. And it's like her reflection on like what the dictionary does. Like, does it prescribe meaning? Does it describe meaning? Like, how do you decide what words should go in? Like, the actual minutiae of writing a definition.
We know that it prescribes meaning, at least sometimes.
Guys, sorry, as a quick side note, am I supposed to be able to hear my own voice in my ear?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
You are a little quiet.
Yeah.
Hold on. Am I hearing you?
Hello? Hello? God, I really hope that you can hear me right now.
Say some more things.
The bell is set a ringing and...
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing you.
Okay.
You are more quiet than we are.
Okay. But we can fix that in post?
Your voice is also very similar to what it comes through on the headphones, more so than most, I would say.
That's strange.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, because I hear my voice quite radically differently.
It takes to being heard, like, it takes to being
recorded
quite
well.
Yeah.
Okay, neat.
I'm
Have you ever thought about
narrating
narrating audiobooks for the Centrelink Hold music?
I would rather not.
Christ, don't get me fucking started. I've listened to a lot of that shit.
Oh, yeah?
The worst part of working for one of the Centrelink lines was that you do not get to be on hold any less than the customers.
1 second.
Nice.
But also they're upset at you. And usually rightly so. So I want to say, you guys, Merlin, you bring up some real fucking literature. And I was just going to be like, I was going to bring up some like protagonists that are shitty, but it's all like, I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi. I'm not, reading is something I almost purely do for fun. And then if I want to have real thoughts, I talk to people.
I read Pride and Prejudice for fun.
Yeah, that's
It was
fair.
really funny, actually.
No, Pride and Prejudice was written to be entertaining, is the thing, right? Like it was written.
Jane Eyre wasn't entertaining. Jane Eyre's really annoying.
That's fair.
So is City of Bones by Cassandra Clare.
I feel like I don't really want to talk in detail about books that I have read educationally because I went through a phase, and I would like to preemptively say that this was not radicalizing me at all. I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I went through a phase where I read a lot of manifestos by some of history's greatest monsters.
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting topic. Is like people that did some fucking stuff, right? Like the idea that someone could do that and that they wrote down the reasons they think they did it.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
That person was probably like quote unquote normal at some point, and it's interesting to like look at their thoughts now.
Especially,
and like
it's like watching a train wreck, right?
Yeah.
It's horrifying, but it is interesting.
Like I read the Elliot Rodger Manifesto. Pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, in terms of like, fucking like fantasy shitheads and whatever, and with Divine Right of Kings as well, I think it is meaningless to attack the premise of a thing, right? If you can say that like it has implications, but the clean premise being wrong is not a meaningful argument, right? You've got a good king. That is the premise of a thing. It is a you've built one that is good. Arguing with that isn't meaningful. It's like saying, it is identical to saying, but lightsabers aren't real.
Oh yeah,
it is.
No, I was.
Yeah,
I was very much calling out a slight straw man, but something I've definitely seen IRL a lot, which is people saying, no, we should automatically apply, real world philosophy to fiction.
It is a fun thought experiment, but it's not
like
more than that, right? It's like saying, we should apply lightsabers to real life. What would they do? It's a fun thing to think about and talk about.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not really analysis literarily.
A take that I've seen coming up more and more, especially on the internet, is this inability to differentiate between, like, the quote-unquote, the, like, necessary evil. And when I say necessary evil, I mean, like, the sort of abuse or, like, misuse of power that's inherent in, like, a systemic, like, political structure, like a monarchy, where you have, like, one person making unilateral decisions.
The nature of the king is to do murder.
Yes.
Even through inaction.
And, like,
a king,
versus individual kings that could be good. Which is... And, like, obviously, like, I don't see it about kings so much. I see it about landlords. A lot. Like, the inherent relationship between a landlord and a tenant is inherently predatory, even if there are individually good and virtuous landlords.
Yes. Yes, if you do not pay me every fortnight, you don't have a place to live, is not really a fucking fair position of power.
Just like...
What are you gonna do, not live?
Yeah, guess I'll die.
Fucking... Immortan Joe from Mad Max Fury Road is what if landlords were wet? What if it was about water?
What if landlords were
what
wet?
Are they gonna do? Not do what he says? He has the water. They do need that to live.
Ooh. Can I bring up a fictional example of this?
Yeah, no.
So this is...
Mad Max
Wait,
is
you're
real.
telling me Immortan Joe's real?
Yeah, no, have you not been down south recently?
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
You took me to Preverly.
It probabably is nice.
That's right, Immortan Joe doesn't live in Preverly.
Okay, just quick aside, Mad Max 1 is literally just what it's like driving down south.
It's a little greener down south.
Depends
Maybe
on the
driving
season.
east.
Yeah.
So, Sten. Sten is one of my favorite sci-fi series.
Right.
Like the gun?
Sorry,
What?
I frowned because I thought you meant Sten from Dragon Age.
No. So Sten is a sci-fi series. It's very interesting. I almost didn't read it because the cover art is sort of that like cheap 80s spacesuit aesthetic that generally denotes that it's quite pulpy.
Shithouse covers really are terrifying. The
It's
amount
not-
of Terry Pratchett potential readers that must have seen those covers and gone, yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
Sorry.
is not pulp science fiction at all.
Sten by whom?
Good question. I will have to look that up.
All right, fair enough.
I
I'll
might
Google
look that
that.
up
You keep
after this.
speaking.
So, the concept of Sten is it's sort of like gritty military science fiction about someone who grew up in like a corporate state and was marginalized, became a rebel, somewhat overthrew the government, but ended up in the service of the wider empire, who had issues with this, particular oppressive corporate state for attempting to undermine them and potentially
just
becoming
quickly, is it STEN?
Yes, SDEN.
Right, I've gotten the gun and the character Merlin mentioned before I've gotten the book.
Yes. Now, the Emperor...
The Sten Chronicles.
Yes, the Emperor in this universe is more accurately described as CEO of the universe, except he is the Emperor. He refers to himself
like
as...
that, though.
He refers to himself as royalty. He has all of the trappings one would normally associate with royalty. Also, he is immortal. We don't know how until much later in the series. It is sort of a plot twist. Not that he is immortal, but how he is immortal.
Yeah.
Now, the Emperor was just some guy.
Yeah.
He was an engineer on a ship. Then he made two very important discoveries. One was his trick for being immortal.
Oh no,
That's
learning
more of
things
a
is
support-
always a bad sign in sci-fi.
That
Don't
was
learn
a
shit ever.
secondary-
Yeah, that was like
a necessary secondary power.
Yeah, that explains why he is still like this, tens of thousands of years later. But more importantly, he discovered how to produce antimatter or hyperspace fuel in like industrial quantities.
He learned how to extrude it.
Yes, so antimatter is is a necessary part of hyperspace fuel in this universe, and he discovered the process for producing it in industrial quantities.
Yeah.
Then he set up a factory, hid the factory, and started giving antimatter to anyone who acknowledged him as Emperor of the fucking universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll
And
do it.
So, you are free to not, refer to him as the Emperor. You just get cut off from the universe because no hyperspace fuel for you.
Yeah.
And the
You
reason
can live,
this...
but the quality of life is drastically different.
Yeah. The reason this particular corporate state that the guy grew up in was, a threat to the Emperor was because they were doing antimatter research and making some fucking progress.
Right, yeah.
And so obviously that had to get shut down. So yeah, Emperor through monopoly.
I also want to say, I think the mark of... It's not necessarily always the right idea, depending on the story you're trying to tell, but a lot of the good stories will acknowledge that the things that they're doing through necessity for the story are spooky things that you shouldn't do and like interact with the consequences therein, right?
The entire problem with Warhammer 40k.
Well, I mean, what if Warhammer 40k didn't go out of its way to be like, look how shit this is, though?
Okay, but a lot of people still don't get that, is what
That's
I'm saying.
a problem not with the source material as much as with the lack of reading comprehension among general nerds, but, like...
It sure is.
If we could give everyone reading comprehension, it would be a very different world.
It, like, really disturbs me sometimes when I, like, understand how little, like, true reading comprehension is, like, prioritized in our education system.
It's very concerning. The hardest thing about reading comprehension is that if you have it and you see someone who doesn't, you can't explain what's wrong.
Yeah. Like, because I watch a lot of American media, because overwhelmingly the amount of media produced
They
that
sort of
gets
do give that
advertised
shit
to
out,
me is American. You know, they have that whole cultural hegemony thing going on. But recently, with Jack and Cam, I watched a German series, still Netflix funded, but a German series called 1899. And the fact that it didn't take the time to state each point at least 4 or 5 times so that they would be very, very certain that the audience got it, definitely for sure, and they just let you watch the show and interpret stimuli. It was very refreshing.
Yeah.
Nice.
I've seen a few German Netflix shows just because I watch a lot of fucking sci-fi when I get time. It's pretty
Weird.
Good. I do want to watch Dark with you at some point.
How will we watch it if it's dark?
Well, you can watch stuff in the dark. It's just harder.
I can't see in the dark.
We'll get a torch.
Yay.
Dark's neat. I don't know if I found the ending as compelling as I was hoping, but it was certainly like interesting, and I enjoyed it. It's about 3 points in a town's timeline that are interlinked. Well, 3 at least.
You said it had a lot to do with circumstantial simultaneity.
Yes. God, do I love narrative simultaneity. Things are happening at the same time in the story. Although, to be fair, there is also like a more physical element to it in Dark, where things are happening at the same time in the story because they're also, you can walk from one to the other. Yeah, like, but yeah, I was going to say, like, kill 6 billion demons, you very briefly brought up. Very much like the core thesis of a lot of that comic is that, like, you cannot rule without doing harm. Yeah. Right? And that's...
The exact phrase is, royalty is a continuous cutting motion.
Yes. There's a few things like that as well. Yes. But yeah, like, there's a lot of things about swords in it, because that's also the kind of thing that it is, but it's, you know, like, the greatest swordsman can cut like 1,000 men with a single blow, but a king may cut off 1,000 heads without thinking, right? Yeah. The greatest swordsman needs no sword, and truly, what is a king if not that? But I really do enjoy it. It's very aware of what it's doing. In a way that I find very fun to read.
A core thesis of Kill 6 Billion Demons is that power collects power. Once you have power, you have more to lose. Which means, despite the fact that you are theoretically more safe, you feel less safe. Yeah. And you seek to accumulate more power to make yourself more safe, making yourself feel less safe, until eventually you are a paranoid wreck who has no purpose except to be powerful. Not to use your power for really anything except to demonstrate your power.
Part of it is also that, you know, to become truly indestructible, you must construct a tower in your mind and make it completely impenetrable from all angles. And then you're stuck in the tower. Yeah. You can't, there's no one else in there. It sucks. To be truly indestructible is to be truly alone, and that's not worth it, man. Also, there's fucking sick fights.
In post, can we just, like, extend that pause out just, like, a little bit longer so it's, like, 10 seconds of completely dead air? Because I think that would be funny.
Also, there's sick fights. Up to John, really. We'll see how he goes.
Yes. There's also a, Spike Angel riding a motorcycle made out of
Spike
spikes
Angel?
and
I thought this was Kill 6 Billion Demons, not Buffy.
I haven't seen Buffy.
Oh, there's
There's
a
a
guy.
References cannot hurt me.
There's a guy called Spike and a guy called Angel.
Oh, right. No, that's right. Neither of them are angels. They're both vampires or demons or something.
Yeah, and, like, Buffy is there, maybe?
Yeah, she gives them boosts. That's why they're called that. That's buffs. Jordy's dog's name is Buffy.
Yeah, that's pretty good, eh?
Yeah. It's a good dog.
Oh, man, this is podcasting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're at home, think about dogs that are good.
Or
One
on
of
the
those is
bus.
Buffy.
If you're on the bus, I want you to think about cats that are good.
One of those is also Buffy.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there is a skeleton motorcycle being ridden by a fucking angel made out of spikes.
Yes.
It's pretty sick.
So, do we want to talk any more about what we are currently talking about? Because I do have a second controversial topic. I was
fuck
told
yeah,
to
go
show
nuts.
off
Yeah,
the
okay.
controversial topics.
Yeah, okay. Give me another one, Ed. I'll
All
take
right.
controversial topics for 400, Alex.
If you're... Now, there is only one story that is truly real, and that is history.
Hero's Journey.
And that is history.
History is just as fake as everything else, but also many stories are, I would say, real in different ways.
Okay,
But that's
my
because I'm
point-
an asshole.
My point is that in real life, there are the most efficient and most effective ways to do things. And, like, it's some
I'll
things,
allow
like
it. Go
problem
on.
solving. Like, a lot of things, like the design of airplanes, tends to be somewhat convergent. Because,
Crabs, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Carcinization.
If you're in the sea, being a crab's pretty good.
Yeah, I might not have explained that concept very well to begin with,
No,
but
it's
yes,
okay,
what
yeah.
I'm talking about is...
There's a reason that the difference between any two things on land is significantly smaller than any two similarly identical fish.
Yes. So, in a situation, there is generally a most realistic good thing to do that...
For a given goal, I'll allow.
Yes. Now, in a lot of specific genres are often associated with approaching problem solving in very specific ways.
May I say that this is? I think we're going to hit the same thing, which is the local peak issue.
The local peak issue. Tell me more.
So it's a mathematical thing, but basically, say you're trying to get to you're on an area of land and you're trying to get to the highest point, and
Yes.
say
That's been known to happen.
so the thing is you don't have very good vision, right? So all you can do is you've got a stick and you can put the stick on the floor next to you and draw a circle with it, and you can figure out which way is the most up from there. So which way is up from where you're going, which is the highest point.
Yep.
Right? And eventually, you will reach the top of the hill. Right? You will go
Okay.
uphill. You will always be going the most uphill direction you can. But there may be a larger hill that
Yeah.
you cannot ever reach with this method.
Yes.
Right? And it's the same with a lot of things in nature. Specifically, like, the way that creatures, that nature evolves things, right? Evolution is a purely hill-climbing algorithm like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't know what it isn't directly involved with. So there may be better ways to do things, but they're not necessarily accessible.
That's an interesting thing. Now, I'm going to ramble on for a bit, and then it's going to turn into what is known as a call-out post.
Sick.
All right.
Is
So-
it at me?
Yes.
Good. I hoped so.
Yes.
You mentioned it earlier.
Now, yes. Because of this...
Get him, Ed.
Now, if you are telling a story in a specific genre,
Yes.
it is generally expected that you will approach problem solvings in ways that is relevant to the genre. If you are
Yes.
telling a noir story, you're probably going to solve it with detective work. If you are telling a steampunk story, you're probably going to approach it with an airship of some kind.
Yes.
That is what genre is,
And
to some extent.
yeah, and not doing that is an intentional decision.
Yes. Now, if you bring in the rationalization and problem-solving skills of someone from the real world.
Yes, this is a problem with how I am. I understand.
I
meant that as a bit.
You eliminate...
He's going somewhere with this, and I know where he's going.
You eliminate the false peak hypothesis that creates the genre.
Well,
and allows you to...
I will say you widen your peak net, but yes.
And
artificially, yes.
And you are able to solve problems in ways that, as far as we know, in the real world, are the most efficient way to solve problems, but are not the genre ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
Why do not the Lord of the Rings characters simply use saltpeter that's on the ground to make a gun?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand.
Now, this is a problem that is notorious in certain role-playing circles as something that some people do. Like, you're in a game of a specific genre, and then someone says, okay, I know that we're, fantasy warlords, but what if we were just incredibly reasonable and did, like, engineering and such to make a better civilization? Now, this is specifically
I feel like we wouldn't be warlords if we did that.
Yes, this is specifically a call-out post at CAM. This is specifically, the example I'm using is what was a Pathfinder game.
Yes. Yes, it turns out that if you give a party of fucking superpowered individuals, which Pathfinder characters are, if you give them, like, the set of morals of a bunch of modern-day fucking university students, they'll do some weird shit.
Yeah.
Although, I will say, that one was a team effort.
Oh, yeah. No. So,
but no, absolutely, I do fall for this quite a lot, and it's something I am trying to improve. Improve is a weird word for it. I am trying to at least be aware when I'm doing this.
Yes.
My characters should have morals that are consistent to the character, not to me.
Well, not just morals, problem-solving abilities.
Yes.
So, now, this has been weighing on my mind recently because it is entirely possible to play a game that is a specific genre and use your real-world problem-solving abilities to come up with a more efficient and, like, more realistic genre. And then the game sort of naturally shifts into this. This is a specific story I would like to tell, but just last week, Cam tried to run us through a situation where, and, like, you may have to twist the world around to accommodate for this, the example of which is Cam ran us through a game in which we were playing the pilots of giant robots.
Yes.
Now, we had to do something about this super weapon that's in space on a station. And obviously, how in this genre where we are playing the pilots of giant robots
are going to factor into how you're expected to solve that.
How would you think we are supposed to solve the problem?
I don't know. It's a tough one, Ed.
Yeah,
you've really stumped me.
I'll give you a clue. It involves getting in the giant robot and shooting at enemies.
I will say, there are the thing with Lancer is that one of its strong suits is that it solidly delineates your combat from your non-combat setup. Right?
Why does it call mechs strong suits?
Nice. It does call similar things hard suits, actually.
Yeah.
But so there are parts of this. I'm running a pre-written campaign, which I don't normally do. It's that there are investigative sections where you're on foot, you're exploring things as a human person with like some stuff going on, but invariably your investigation does lead to a place where you can get in your giant robot and kick the shit out of some other guys in giant robots.
Yes.
Right? Like, at certain points in the investigation, I reward you with a fucking sick robot fight.
Yes. The problem was, not a problem so much. Well,
we
it
ran
wasn't
into
a problem
situation.
in like
solved
a
the
bad
problem.
sense. It was a problem just in a we needed like to tweak the lore a little.
It turns out that we didn't. I had misremembered a thing.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that there was three missions. Sorry, three chunks after the section we were in, and based on how you played the first two sections, you could skip the first two chunks.
Oh, I see.
It turns out that there's two chunks, and you can skip both of them.
So the audience at home is probably quite confused by this. So let me just elaborate.
No, that's very fair.
The problem that we thought we encountered was that we were just very good at problem solving during the investigation portion, And we kept thinking of solutions to the problem that might not involve us getting in the giant robots.
Yes.
And
I see.
seeing as how this is a game about getting in the giant robots, us coming up with a solution of, okay, but what if we just isolate and disconnect the relevant circuits? Meaning that we don't have to go and fight the super weapon. We can just shut it down remotely. But obviously, this is a game that's designed to make us get in the giant robots and shoot at stuff. So we had to kind of...
There are a few ways around it as well,
yes. It wasn't an unsolvable problem, but we did need to come up with reasons why we had to get in the giant robots.
At the very least, for the campaign to continue to function, I have to make it so that you do not get punished for finding a way around it, but you still get to have the fun fight in some way.
Yeah.
The actual canon answer is that you actually just skip the next two fights, which I find very disappointing. I really like those two fights, and I'm working on... There's a few options I've got there, but it's a weird situation because, yeah, through playing well and investigating things and solving the first two acts of it, you've just missed out on two of the most interesting fights in the campaign.
It's like golf. The goal of golf is to play as little golf as possible.
It's not quite.
That's the goal of life, to be honest.
It's not because of what Dave, Dave had a plan to solve the thing, and you and Dave's plan, I believe.
Yeah.
But you basically found a way to be like, well, the thing that they're trying to do won't work if we do this. Which is true. And that really, I could have found a way around that. The problem there is also that it's just assumed that if you successfully beat the fights at the end of the two investigative sections, you just don't get the next two fights. And I find that very strange. And again, especially because those two fights are some of the most interesting fights in the game.
So yes, I apologize for how winding the story was to get here, but the core of my thesis is this: if you are it's a problem of game design, not an unsolvable problem, but a problem nonetheless, that if you are too sensible, you can remove the fun action stuff by just being good at solving problems without action.
If your character is an adventurer, they want to go on adventures. Let them.
Yes.
I think it's really funny because I'm thinking about L5R now, a game where it's great. You can actually sometimes just solve a problem without violence, and everyone's like, neat. Although I do miss fighting people sometimes.
Yes. So yes,
also because you can get trapped into it doesn't matter how good you are at solving problems. At some point, you've been ordered to fight someone.
Yes, the problem that arose that we had to figure out a way to solve, or at least the game designers did, was if you're writing a game about getting in giant robots and shooting stuff, it's a bit of a problem if being too good at the game removes the need to get in the giant robots and shooting stuff.
May I, So I don't know if you're familiar with it, Ed, but there's a, Lancer, the game that Ed and I are talking about, has a spin-off game called, what's it called?
Icon.
No, not Icon, the one about fleets. It's Lancer, Lancer: Battle Group, which is about space fleet combat, right?
Yes.
And it goes very out of its way right at the start of this book to say, space fleet combat is fucked up and nightmarish, and it sucks to be in, and nobody in fleets wants to do it. It is a core tenet of gameplay that, for a fight to start, you're past the point where you can just avoid it.
Yes.
It is like, if you have started a fight in this system, it is in this mechanical system in this game, you aren't at, that is because it is, you're past the point where you could have avoided it.
Yeah.
It has to
Diplomacy has completely fallen apart.
All other alternatives have failed. It's, whether it's just this is a, the battlefront is larger than just your fleets. Sometimes conflicts have to happen, right? Whenever they get pushed, that's where the gameplay is. So it is assumed that you will get into fights because that's what you're playing. And you can avoid fights by talking, but you're not playing battle group at that point. You're avoiding playing battle group.
Yes.
So don't feel bad for forcing this to go into a fight.
Yes. The fundamental problem of playing a genre character is that you have to solve problems like a genre character would.
Yeah.
Is that chances are the things that are fun to watch the character do are the things that the genre does.
Yes.
They can solve things a different way, but it won't be as entertaining because that's not what you've built.
Yes, that's phrasing it better than I did.
Yeah. Especially in RPGs where the system that you're using is usually built for a certain kind of tone and a kind of gameplay, right? And so, a system that's got a very solid, like, investigative rule set, you miss that out if you don't do any investigation. A system with a good combat rule set, in a way you are rewarded for fucking up and getting into a fight.
Yeah.
And it's neat. You can, and when you work with it, it's really great when you can reward a good investigation with a good fight, rather than punish a bad investigation with a good fight, or punish a good investigation with no fight, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to do, because a lot of the time, if you're investigating something that will lead to a fight, chances are fucking that investigation up does get you in a fight.
So, yes. Now... Oh, fuck. What was I going to say?
Who's to say?
Ed, hopefully. You got
yes, Torchbearer. I like Torchbearer.
Yeah.
Torchbearer solves this in a very clever way, I think. Your character has, like, a mental stability / mental health stat.
Yep.
I would... I don't think that's quite the way to phrase it, because that brings in, like, themes of sanity that I'm not sure are quite parallel.
Yes.
I would call it the normal meter.
Yes, okay. That's a better way of putting it, I apologize. Yes, your character has, like, a normality meter. At 0, your character breaks and you can't play them anymore because they just don't fit in.
They're not normal.
Yeah.
They're too not normal. You can't play someone that far from normal.
But...
They have...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, they have become so attached to their role as an adventurer that they can't fit into, like, any kind of society anymore, and they kind of have to run away into the woods to eat berries and sticks.
Yes, they've gone feral.
Yes.
But there is also a maximum, and if your character ever hits that maximum normality...
They go become a real member of society?
Yeah,
Yep.
they just retire from being an adventurer because, like, normal people aren't adventurers.
Yeah, you
And-
just decide that you want to settle down and have kids.
Yeah, like, you are playing a game about being, like, people who don't quite fit into society, and if you accidentally fit into society, you just make a new character.
Yeah.
Who
That
doesn't fit
character's
into
solved
society
it.
as well.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make a setting or a system where, like, normal people do become adventurers, because it is so anathemic to what it is to be a person.
Yeah. Which is why I don't support people making jokes about adventurers having, like, or being orphans, because that's one of the easiest ways to give someone the motivation to, like, give up their roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, having no, like, solid, stable home life is almost a prerequisite to being the kind of person who starts murdering for fun and profit.
Yeah.
Well, at least in that, you know what I mean.
Like, you can write a character that is well adjusted.
Well, it's if you've
And
got a well-adjusted
has,
character, there
like-
must be something really wrong with them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I've seen a few good examples, like, just a retiree who, like, wanted to see the world, or...
Even if you're not, like, murdering other sapient humanoids for fun and profit, you are still, like, essentially murdering animals for fun and
Or at least
profit.
risking your life.
Yeah. Which I don't think anyone can argue is, like, more sane.
I think it's more sane, right? But not not healthy, certainly,
Yeah.
necessarily. Like,
More normal, that's the definition of using. Yes.
yeah. I think like, at the very least, you are either the kind of weirdo who's doing this for their own reasons, or you're being forced to do this for reasons beyond your control. The only reason a normal guy is in the 5th level of a dungeon is because someone put him there.
Yeah.
And that can't just be the player.
It's
The
always...
GM put him there as a friendly guide.
It's always important when making an RPG character, and this is a lesson for the folks at home or on the bus, you should always ask yourself a question: why is my character hanging out with a bunch of other characters doing adventurous stuff?
Yeah.
Or doing the stuff the game is about? If you don't have an answer to that, make a different character.
Yeah.
Like, it's a
Yeah.
common problem that some DMs
Why
have.
hasn't Enid Four Swords just gone home?
Yeah. It's
I
not
will-
not just the problem of, like, why haven't they gone home? Like, a common problem some people who are starting off in RPGs have is they make a character who is a loner. who
we've
doesn't
talked
want
about
to,
this one directly on the podcast before, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well...
No, sorry, yeah, it's just that John has gone through this exact bit because he's done it. Where he built a loner and then, like, went off to be alone, and then everyone was like, well, alright, bye. It's important that you're having fun with the party. You gotta build in a reason to hang out with those guys, even if it's in character reluctantly or whatever, right?
That's why I find a good strategy for myself when I RPG is... And I know that this is a little bit lazy, but whatever. Point 1 is to make characters that aren't smart. Because... And this is for me. This is... The first one is a Merlin only tip, and the second one is an everyone tip. Point 1 is that I'm not very good at problem solving.
I think you don't give yourself enough credit, but that's not what we're talking about.
People have watched me, like, struggle to, like, solve riddles and, like, open boxes and, like, do abstract, like, RPG puzzles, and it's just something that's not my strong suit, which is fine. So I build characters that don't need me to be good at that, and then I don't even have to roleplay being, like, smarter or more strategic than I am.
May I turn that into a general statement?
Yeah.
It is important to play characters who are going to be able to interact with puzzles and other people in a way you are able to roleplay to a degree, or at least to acknowledge that when those things happen, you're going to be rolling dice and getting how good you did.
Yeah. And I think it's completely fine to say, like, oh, I rolled 90, I guess I trip over and I smash the puzzle to pieces and now we have to find another way around. Versus, like, oh, I rolled a 1 and I'm able to, like, deduce that the sun coming in through the window is lining up with an angle that, like, reflects, like, the secret carving of the answer on the side of the wall to me.
It's a common problem where in games that have a charisma stat, that, like, you just play a character with a higher charisma stat than one might describe oneself as having in real life. And then, because charisma is just how, like, to a large extent, how you act and how you talk, it's hard to know how to roleplay that person.
Yeah. There's actually the inverse problem of that, where real-life people who are very good at interacting with other people can play a character with low charisma and talk their way through problems without having to roll. I actually do have a solid solution to these.
Oh, yeah?
Which is that, and I think this is important because this is how literally every other mechanic in the game works. With any kind of, social stat, you give your intent, you roll the dice, you describe what happened. So, rather than you say what your character says, because, like, if you're good enough at oratory work, you can say a fucking sick speech, right? And then if you roll a shit roll, it doesn't work. And even if you get bonuses or whatever, right, like, you're manipulating the outcome, or you're getting a result that doesn't actually mean anything. Whereas if you roll first, then someone who's not good at role-playing, like, speeches yet can just give the gist of the speech, right? It goes well, here's what you did well.
If you are sufficiently articulate with your, like, mouth and general demeanor, you can just talk to the GM, and that will happen in place of doing a roll, because that's what feels natural from a gameplay perspective. I think it almost, like you described, Cam, works better if you sort of, like, place down the roll as sort of a guide for how the conversation went, and then you can kind of, like, broaden it into, like, a dynamic scene that happened once you know, like, what the end result is.
There's no other mechanic. You can't pick up a real sword, stab the GM, and then say, alright, I don't need to roll, I just did that. I mean, it would work with a sword specifically.
I believe that's how Fishblade works.
I have seen a fun RPG one-shot idea where you have to arm wrestle the GM every time you make a strength check.
I do know about that. But
Now, what you were saying about rolling and then describing what you did, I have a great example of that, which I think I might have even brought up before.
Just quickly with it, it also means that you're fucking, like, excellent verbal role players, right? People who can talk their way circles around shit. They also will enjoy having to roleplay fucking it.
Yeah. Like,
beefing it.
An example I once did a really, really weird way of intimidating someone. You were both there. You were in the campaign.
Yeah.
Now, this is a story I love to bring up. I intimidated another character while just holding a bonsai tree and trimming it, and talking about how much I love trimming the bonsai tree. Now, I rolled high, because we were using Cam system, And so I came up with a really effective speech about how something grows out of line, and I cut it. And, just timing everything really well, being really intimidating. Whereas if I had rolled low, I would have been like, I've got a fucking bonsai and I'll stab you.
You make the same speech, but you accidentally hack whole branches off of the bonsai
it's also,
tree.
it's the subtle things, but it's also that had you done that speech first, right?
Yeah.
I would have either had to say, all right, it works, which sucks, especially because it was against another player.
Yeah.
And L5R is one of the few systems where I'm completely on board for player versus player roles.
Yeah.
But also, the options were either you don't have to roll, which sucks because there's another player there, and also, you've avoided the game now, or letting you roll with the chance that your cool speech does nothing. You fuck it up beef ways. And that's also deeply sad. And it also, again, means that somebody who's not able to do that yet, who's still learning to be very articulate with a character and to really give that character the voice that they need, suffers because they can't do that yet.
And not everyone, ever accomplishes that. I feel like I'm quite bad at getting into a character voice. I feel much more comfortable and much more accomplished at, describing almost from, a third-person omniscient perspective what my character does, rather than the specific verbiage by which they use to accomplish it.
What your character is trying to do and how are the important things, usually.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that character, the infamous... beloved, unbeloved Kikita Hayashi.
No, I love him. He's a poor little meow meow. In an ideal world, I would get Kikita Hayashi and put him in, a jar with, holes drilled into the top and keep him like a butterfly.
Now,
He would hate that on account of not being able to sword fight people.
Yes. Now, this is circling back around to a previous point, but I actually also have some great advice for the RPG players or prospective RPG players at home on the topic of the loner problem. Now, as was said before, if you make a character who doesn't want to hang out with the rest of the party, then they just go away and the rest of the party is like, well, I guess we're doing our stuff.
They don't have to want to, but if they don't want to, they gotta have to.
Yeah.
Yes, no, but this is a specific trick you can use. Now, this requires you to do some pre-preparation and talk with other players beforehand.
Always
fucked up. I would never do that.
Which is always a good idea, I think. But in this specific example, if you have made a character who is kind of antisocial, what you can do is just find someone who has made a character who is very social, and give yourself a very good reason to need to be near that character or want to be near that character. Now, in the example of this game, Kikita Hayashi was a dick. He
sucks so bad.
Yeah, he was incredibly antisocial.
Spectacular L5R character.
He was incredibly antisocial, just didn't like hanging out with people who were from any kind of different background than he was.
Really thought he was the best at what he did, and it was hard to be annoyed at, which sucked mostly because he was really good at that thing.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, in a lot of systems... Well, in a lot of situations, this character would just not have any reason to be around the rest of the party. He doesn't want to hang out with people who are from different backgrounds.
He would at least feel a little bit forced.
Yeah. But Kikita Hayashi was the bodyguard to Kikita Nagito.
Yep.
Who was Merlin's character. Merlin, friend of the show, in the room with us right now.
Just quickly, sorry. One of the reasons Kikita Hayashi was such an asshole was that he was really such a staunch fucking dude who does what he's told. And so it's not like he could have just... he's not antisocial in that he'll just leave. He's antisocial because he's too much of a fucking stick in the mud. Yeah. So the fact that he has to bodyguard Kikita Nagito is... He has to.
And
it's anathema to him not to.
It would never even occur to him to not bodyguard Kikita Nagito.
Yeah.
And Kikita Nagito was a cinnamon roll who just wanted to hang out with the rest of the party and be friends.
Little art boy.
Yeah, I got him out of a lot of the sort of samurai social mores by making him an artisan. And doing so, almost in a similar way to how, sort of our contemporary conception of older Renaissance artists you were allowed to kind of flout social conventions in the pursuit of, like, finer art, to an extent, asterisk.
If the things that you make are cool enough, people will let you be eccentric.
Yes.
Also note that part of being a bodyguard, especially for a Kakita, which both of these players were, is when your, like, ward insults someone or gets into a fucking fight, you are expected to duel for them, up to and including killing someone.
Yeah.
This is what Hayashi lived to do, by the way. He was a duel boy.
Kakita Hayashi wanted to get into duels so bad.
It was his life's goal.
And he was actually being punished by being assigned to, like, the honor of bodyguarding this, like,
Darling of the
renowned
court,
artist.
yeah.
Yeah, everyone likes Nagito.
Yeah, like, it's a massive honor to be Kakita Nagito's bodyguard.
But he is a little bit of a notorious softie who would never insult someone.
Yeah, and so
he's not going to get in a duel.
It was a magnificent backhanded compliment for Kakita Hayashi to be assigned to a prestigious person who would never need him.
Especially, yeah, so, and Hayashi and Nagito had such differing moral views, but also, Hayashi, you know, you weren't just bodyguarding the soul, sorry, the physical body of Nagito, you were bodyguarding the soul. Your opinions on how to be a good person were important.
And they were so wrong.
Yes. And again, you sucked so bad.
Yes.
Ed and I were not close friends when we decided to do this. We just kind of impulsively did it. And look at us now.
Yeah. And, like, I did
Really
have
could have been a make or break situation.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
no,
two could have
like,
just stabbed each other in real life over that.
Yeah.
In
And
fact-
instead we got matching hair dye.
I even had to basically, you know, learn to more effectively not let my character's action influence my own body language, because I just kept glaring at the members of the players of the characters that I disapproved of as in character.
Yeah, we did have to give, like, Ed's not actually upset. The character's upset. Ed's having fun.
The fact that I'm sitting directly between these two players who are having an in-character romance that Hayashi disapproves of does not mean that I am trying to separate you two physically in real life.
Although you were physically separating them.
Yes, that was a coincidence.
Well, it wasn't a coincidence. There was a causal relationship here. You were separating them physically because your character needed to separate their characters physically. Or socially.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes,
The hostility radiated out into your physical behavior in a really funny way.
the moral of the story is you can make characters who don't get along with most of the party. Just don't make characters that avoid the party entirely.
Yeah, if your character would leave, you've fucked it.
Yeah.
They'll leave.
Yeah. They either have to want to or need to be there. Preferably both, but one will do if you want to make someone spicy.
Well, I mean, like, I think, honestly, having them be at odds can also be very fun. A character that really wants to be there, but really shouldn't be there, fun. Character that really doesn't want to be there, but actually has to be there, fun.
Yeah.
Character that wants to and has to be there, that works. That's the standard.
That works, and that can also be fun and dynamic depending on how you stack things.
I love to play normal guys.
Yes.
Like, normal TM in that, like...
There is also the reverse that we should talk about that I also have a pertinent example of. A character who wants to be there, that has to be there, but nobody else wants them to be there.
I will say it is almost as important, although I will admit not quite as important, that there's a reason everyone else wants you to be there.
Yes.
Yeah, the party has to tolerate you. That's important.
Yes.
You can only make them work so hard on that.
The cam threshold is always present.
The cam threshold is a very extreme version of this, where the rest of the party can no longer justify letting you live. But well before that is the point where you are just sort of only still here because you're at the table.
Yes. Now, a good way to avoid the cam threshold while playing with the cam threshold is you can play a character who other characters want gone or even want dead, but because they have a role that they fill, that they have to fill, the characters just cannot really do anything
For this kind of one, I would say definitely discuss it with people. If you intend on building a character that can fuck around with the cam threshold, Talk to the gang.
Yes.
Don't spring that on them out of nowhere. Make sure that that's something... Because, like, it can be really fun doing that shit on purpose.
Yes.
Right? And if everyone else knows you're doing it on purpose and is also, like, then able to do things about it without feeling bad...
So
great.
Yeah, because if they don't know, they might think you're just being a dick for no reason, and that sucks.
The character I am thinking of that I played, by the name of Wilson
Is it
Charles...
Winston Churchill?
Wilson Charles... I didn't actually plan for him to be this much of a menace when I started off.
Yeah.
But when I realized that I had created a menace, I did in fact, like, ask the rest of the party's permission to be a menace.
Yeah.
He wasn't born this way. It was the soy sauce.
Wilson Charles spent his downtime, like, studying the capabilities of other party members so that he knew their stats in game, and like
I don't like that, right? Your character shouldn't be able to calculate the chances of victory in a mind fight. Stats aren't real.
Fair enough.
But I understand where we got there from, and I was on board with it at the time. Like
analyzing Cam. So on a scale of 0 to 43, how healthy would you say you are?
If you had to like give me a number of health that you have left, what would it be? This is a funny bit, but shouldn't ever be done for reals.
This did lead to one of my favorite moments, though. Like, and you can disagree that this was fun. Due to actually not quite any fault of his own. For once.
Oh, yeah.
Wilson Charles was framed for a heinous crime for which the penalty can only be death.
Yes. The several crimes you had done for which the penalty could only be death were irrelevant.
Yes. As the rest of the party fanned out and surrounded him in the middle of this hangar, Wilson Charles looked around, uttered the phrase, "There is a 12% chance you can stop me," and disappeared.
I think, to be fair, my top two Wilson Charles moments is when, in a regular fight with some dudes, another member of the party accidentally shot his dick clean off.
It wasn't shot off, it was melted.
Yeah, with a gun.
Yes.
They shot... It was gone afterwards. It was a tank melt gun. We house ruled that if you rolled a 69 to hit and hit, it doesn't just hit the legs, which is what that result would normally be. It specifically hits the dick. And that's a great house rule. You can still use the leg critical charts. It just applies to the dick. It's very funny.
What happens if the character in question doesn't have a dick?
You just go with it as is.
Okay.
Like, whatever they got.
Yeah.
69, I'll admit, a lot of the characters that we've done this with have dicks, but Wilson Charles didn't after that.
Yeah.
And a 69 will still hit it's the zone, right? It's about the area.
Yes. It can be something different. Like,
Yeah.
if you're rolling for what you find while you're searching, and you roll a 69 and find something...
Rolled a 69
it
on
will
treasure,
be-
and now I have a solid gold dildo. What next?
Well, once this happened and the players found a crate full of spotted dick...
Yeah.
Which
a
is
lovely
a fish.
dessert.
The other top Wilson Charles moment for me was when you were like mind puppeting two goons to carry your own unconscious body around. So you were hard mind puppeting one guy, which is the one where you get unconscious and you just fucking are like controlling that dude's brain.
Yeah.
And from that dude's brain,
You were controlling
doing a
another
thing where
dude.
you can spend half of your actions to just force them to do stuff on their actions. So
Now-
you were going at half the speed of a guy because you were fucking like working terrifically hard to control two dudes at once, and those dudes were just sort of lugging your unconscious body around.
Now, I wish I had any other reaction to this, but all I have to say to you is Vriska Core. For the Mobius double reach around.
Yep.
So, for context, we were investigating a criminal gang, and some thugs snuck up on Wilson Charles and stuck a bag over his head.
Oh no!
Wilson Charles, being a mind reader, simply put his mind in one of the dudes kidnapping him, meaning he could see again. But then was like, "Hang on, this is a good opportunity to get some information. I want to see where they take me." And just continued kidnapping my own unconscious body.
And then the other guy got sus that something was up, and so he started puppeting that guy as well.
And just like the two bodies I was controlling while I was unconscious in the trunk were just set, like, driver, take us where you would normally take us.
Driver,
execute the plan.
Return home.
Let's go.
And do you know? May I tell them how this story ended?
Go right ahead.
Whilst I was locked in the boot, I was like, okay, I need to get rid of these two guys now. So I found like some other like sketchy looking types.
Surely just drive the car directly into a brick wall.
Oh no, he specifically did not have the driver.
Yeah, no.
Right.
I couldn't.
He had two guys in the back.
So, like, after the driver had gone, I was like, I need to dispose of these two guys.
He had two other members of the organization.
And so I walked them out into the street in a very shady part of town, saw some very sketchy-looking people, and just walked the two of them up to him and said, hello, could you please tie us up for a short amount of time and then release us? And then those two were stabbed to death. And
yeah,
of
that'll
course,
happen.
Like, I didn't want to be in their bodies when they were stabbed to death, so I let go of the mind control and returned to my own body, leaving them
with the consequences.
A few seconds of awareness,
mid-stab motion, yeah,
to like come to terms with the fact that there was a time skip and then they were being stabbed to death.
Yeah,
well,
I'll be honest.
They were aware of the things you were doing the whole time.
I don't think that's enough time to come to terms with it.
Yeah.
No,
I'll be real here.
They were watching the whole time.
Okay, cool. And they definitely
psychic powers
accepted
they
it.
used are very explicitly awful to use.
Yes.
I mean, that's good. I like that. That's fun about psychic powers.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I like it
every
when the
time he
magic
uses
is
them,
bad
there's
and
a chance
awful
that he
to
explodes
use.
as well.
Yes.
That's me when I do anything.
I didn't choose these powers. I played a wizard. The wizard automatically got horrible powers.
You chose which ones you were specking into.
From a list of horrible powers. And I was like, okay, I automatically have horrible powers.
Let's go.
Yeah, I will roleplay this.
What are the worst ones?
Okay,
No. I didn't choose the worst one.
Oh.
Like, I just chose from the list.
Yeah.
It was a horrible list.
Something I do like about psychers in most 40k systems like that is that one of the balancing aspects of being a wizard is that one of them is that people wish you were dead. Fuck wizards, those guys are no good. Get burned at the stake. If you were in 40k, you'd get burned at the stake about being a wizard.
Oh.
That's just how it is. It keeps you balanced, babe. Because you're so good otherwise. But yeah, is also every time you use psychic powers, there's a chance that things go terribly wrong. Because, you're channeling the power of hell through your soul. I have been in a game where one of the players in the very first combat, in the very first turn, tried to do a psychic power a little bit too hard and just died. Yep. And in Black Crusade, you do not start with the ability to not die when you're killed that you do in most other 40k RPGs. So he just died. He was just gone. Good game, bud.
Excellent.
You've rolled one dice for this man, and he's gone.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing you'd expect more from Only War, even. Like,
Black Crusade is the one for playing fucked up guys.
Yeah. But your guy shows up, explodes, next guy.
Well, specifically in Only War, if you're playing a psyker, you get your comrade in Only War is... So Only War's the one for playing, like, soldiers in 40k. Everyone gets, or almost everyone gets, a little guy called a comrade, whose job is to fill out the squad. They get a little bit of a personality and a name, and they have...
Oh, you mean a little guy who's there to be imprinted upon, right?
Yes. No, specifically, yes. They've got the state healthy, wounded, and dead, and they don't roll dice themselves unless you send them off alone, and it's a bad idea to do that. They generally just improve what you do.
Yeah. I got so attached to my little Only War guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I heavily roleplayed, like, his wife being pregnant and us all getting, like, updates on how her pregnancy was going and, like, the photos from her ultrasounds.
As the comrade just racks up death flags.
Yeah, and then we rolled for where she was living, and it was fucking Reach.
Yeah, that was a Halo game. She had a clock on her as well. But yeah, so where was I going with this? That wasn't even the most attached I've seen someone get to a comrade. Or I suppose Dave really only got attached to his comrade in post-mortem. But sorry, the Psycho comrade, the different classes get different comrade special abilities.
Yeah.
The Psycho one of them is that your comrade is not actually just here to be a guy, right? They're here to, one, keep you alive because you're an important asset, you're a wizard, and two, to shoot you if anything too spooky happens.
Yeah.
And so one of the core mechanics that stops you from just exploding is that if you roll really badly on the weird shit that happens when you use Psychic Powers chart, your comrade just stabs you.
Yep.
Shanks you a little bit and is like, oi, get it together. And you're like, ow, okay. Right, yes.
That sounds like fodder for, like, a 42-chapter-long fan fiction.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yep.
Can love bloom on the battlefield?
On the other side of that nightmare situation is playing a commissar where you don't get a comrade, but if someone else fucks up, you can shoot their comrade about it.
Oh, thank God.
So it's like, alright, you fucking shoots the guy's comrade, do better.
And as a third part of this trio, there is the Stormtrooper.
No comrade.
Yeah, who has no comrade because he's better than you and he's here to look after you. Everyone is his comrade because you are beneath him.
Dave was forced to take that. Dave is the guy who got too attached to his comrade who died. He after his first comrade died, and like he'd sent that guy off on solo missions a couple times and he succeeded, which is insane. Like that doesn't happen. They have 2 health. He'd sent his comrade off on like he loved that guy. That guy died in the first fight with the actual Covenant. And the next comrade he got, he just sort of threw that guy's life away. And then the next comrade he got, it was even more callous. And I think 3 comrades that he just threw away they were like, we're not giving you any more.
Yeah, well, you don't get any more
guys. You can
guys.
go into Stormtrooper, or you can play another class without a comrade now. Because, yeah, the actual army stopped assigning him guys.
Yeah.
I just want to say sorry to John preemptively, because it's taken me 2 hours to realize that I've been accidentally kicking the mic stand the whole podcast. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, how long is it? It's
about 2 hours.
Yeah, we can probably, should we try and wrap up soon?
Yeah, okay.
1 hour 45.
Yeah, oh no, that's great.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any thoughts?
Final thoughts. You know what I really liked about Kings was I've never read Foundation, right? But I thought it was cool in Foundation how they had 3 emperors who were all clones of each other at different points in his life.
The best part about that is that you can tell you haven't read Foundation because those guys aren't in it. The best part of the TV show, and the only part that was like actually spiritually in line with it tonally at least in line with the original content, was the characters that weren't in the original content.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's great. Like those guys were the best part for sure.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was very Mother Maiden crone in a way that I don't see reinterpreted very often. And it's interesting to see the genders flipped on that. And I know that traditionally, obviously, the Mother Maiden crone trichotomy is meant to be a sign of not quite feminist freedom, but definitely woman-oriented freedom. I'm blowing the mic out again, whoopsie. Woman-oriented freedom. But I just thought that it was nice and refreshing to see it reinterpreted and remixed.
Good to let Lee Pace fucking go ham as well.
Oh, Lee Pace was so attractive and also a really good actor in Foundation. And that's my final thought.
I have 2 final thoughts. One,
How extravagant.
The overarching theme of most of the things I have said tonight is this. Different stories require different things, and you should take into account the
stories
story
are
you are
absolute.
telling when you think about what tropes, what characters, etc., etc. It is good or necessary to include in your story.
Absolutes, only absolutes, baby.
Second thought is that, much like Gendo Ikari, it can sometimes be very difficult to motivate your players to get in the giant robots.
I mean, the players need to do the campaign, otherwise Ray's going to have to do it.
I mean, if Shinji had just solved the Angels crisis, I don't think he would have been too upset.
What if Shinji had just done it?
What if Shinji had gone down to the basement and solved Evangelion, and they were like, well, you don't get to have the cool robot. You know what? The anime wouldn't have been very good. this is my planet, and due to my nature, it is already the planet of the apes.